Some stories have a natural gravity that pulls you in until there is no turning back. Experience the weight of every choice and the momentum of a destiny that cannot be stopped. Click subscribe now and let the pull of great storytelling take you away.
The pen was already in my hand. I had driven 40 minutes through morning traffic to get to my brother's attorney's office. I had dressed carefully, pressed blazer, hair pulled back because I wanted to look like someone who had her life together, someone who trusted her family, someone who was finally ready to move forward after the worst year of her life. I had the folder of documents in my lap, already flagged, with little yellow sticky tabs where I needed to sign. 6 signatures. That was all that stood between me and what my father had left us. Then my phone buzzed. I almost didn't look at it. My brother was sitting across the conference table, watching me with that patient, practiced smile he had been wearing all morning. The attorney was uncapping his own pen. Everything felt settled. Inevitable, the kind of moment that has already decided itself before you even arrive. But I looked. It was a text from my accountant, Patricia. She had been my father's accountant for 11 years before she became mine. And in all that time, she had never once texted me in all capitals. Not once. CLAIRE. Do not sign anything. Call me right now. I found something. I read it twice, then I read it a third time. Everything okay? My brother asked. His voice was warm and unhurried. The voice of a man who believes he has already won and unhurried. The voice of a man who believes he has already won. Just my assistant, I said. I set the pen down on the table very carefully as though it were made of glass. Can I have 2 minutes? I need to step into the hallway. He waved his hand generously. Of course, take your time. I walked out of that conference room with my heart doing something strange and uneven in my chest, and the moment the door clicked shut behind me, I called Patricia. She answered before the first ring finished. Don't go back in there, she said. Her voice was tight in a way I had never heard before. Patricia had handled estate disputes, audits, and IRS letters with the calm of someone who had seen everything. Whatever she had found, it had rattled her. Claire, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Those documents your brother sent over for review, I've been going through them since 6 this morning. Page 47, buried in the property transfer addendum. There was a clause, one sentence, written in the most deliberately confusing legal language I have ever seen, that terminates your co-ownership interest in the business the moment you sign. I pressed my back against the hallway wall. What do you mean terminates? I mean you sign those papers today and by tomorrow morning Coastal Ridge Distribution is 100% your brother's, not split equally like he told you, not held in trust like your father specified. His. Entirely. Irrevocably. She paused. And Claire, that is not the worst part. I closed my eyes. Tell me. I've been cross-referencing the business accounts against the estate inventory your father's attorney filed when he passed, in the last 14 months. The entire time your father was sick. $340,000 moved out of the business operating account into a holding LLC I have never seen before. The LLC was registered 8 days after your father's first hospitalization. The hallway felt very cold suddenly. Or maybe that was just me. He started moving money, I said slowly, while Dad was still alive. While your father was on a ventilator, Patricia said. Claire, I am not a criminal attorney, but I know what this looks like. And I know that if you walk back into that room and put your name on page 47, you will have no legal standing to recover any of it. The signature waives your right to contest the asset transfer. That clause was put there on purpose. Someone, and I think we both know who, designed this entire document specifically to get you to sign away, the ability to fight back. I stood in that hallway for a long moment. The carpet was gray. There was a watercolor print of a lighthouse on the wall across from me. Mundane, forgettable details that I found myself staring at while my entire understanding of the past 14 months rearranged itself into something I did not want to see. Before I tell you what my brother had planned for me in that conference room, I want to ask you something. Drop a comment below. Has someone in your family ever smiled at you while quietly dismantling everything your parents built for you? Because I have learned that the most dangerous betrayals do not arrive with warnings. They arrive wearing a blazer, holding a pen, telling you it is all just paperwork. Patricia's words had cracked something open, and standing in that hallway, with the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead, everything I had told myself was normal began to look like what it actually was. My father had been sick for 14 months, a slow, cruel decline that started with fatigue and ended with machines breathing for him. Throughout all of it, my brother had been the steady one, the organized one. He had flown home immediately. He had taken charge of the medical decisions, the financial paperwork, the conversations with doctors that I was apparently too emotional to sit through. He had made himself indispensable at exactly the moment when everyone else was too grief-stricken to pay attention to the details. I had been grateful. I had told him more than once that I did not know what we would do without him. I had said it while he nodded thoughtfully and said things like, "I just want to take care of the family. That is all I have ever wanted." I had believed him, the way you believe someone who shows up holding all the right expressions at all the right moments. I thought back to the quarterly reports from the business that I had stopped receiving about 8 months ago. My brother had explained it was a formatting change, that the new accountant was restructuring the reporting system. I had asked once and accepted the answer and not asked again, because I was grieving and because it felt small compared to everything else, and because he had frowned slightly when I brought it up. That particular frown, disappointed and a little hurt, that had a way of making me feel like I was being suspicious and ungrateful. I thought about the estate attorney my father had originally hired, the one who had retired unexpectedly the month after my father's diagnosis and been replaced, seamlessly and quickly, by the man currently sitting in that conference room holding an uncapped pen. I thought about how, at every turn, when I had a question, there was always a reason my concern was either premature or unnecessary or just slightly missing the point. And there was always someone patient and calm available to explain it to me. And I had let myself be explained to over and over because it was easier than fighting and because the alternative, that the person who had eulogized my father with tears running down his face had been robbing him before he was even gone, was too ugly to want to be true. But Patricia had spent the morning with the numbers, and the numbers did not care about what was too ugly to be true. "Patricia," I said quietly, "how long do I need? To build a case? Weeks, ideally. But to protect yourself right now? Today? I need you to not sign those documents. That is all. Just walk out of that building." I looked back at the closed door of the conference room. "What if he just tries again?" I said. "Next week, different documents, different approach. He has had 14 months to plan this. He's not going to stop because I walked away today." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," I said, "that I don't want to keep running from someone who has home field advantage. I'm thinking that if he believes today went according to plan, he won't cover his tracks. He'll move forward." I paused. "Can you get me everything you found this morning? The LLC registration, the account transfers, the clause breakdown? I can have it on your phone in 10 minutes. Then I'm going back in. Claire, I know. But I'm not going back in as someone who is about to sign. I'm going back in as someone who is about to sign. I'm going back in as someone who already knows." I straightened my blazer. "Send me everything. And call your contact at the forensic accounting firm. I may need them on standby." I hung up and stood in that hallway for exactly 90 seconds, breathing slowly, until the thing roaring in my chest settled into something quieter and colder and useful. Then I opened the door. My brother looked up with that easy smile. The attorney had refreshed his coffee. Everything in the room suggested comfortable patience, the particular relaxation of people waiting for a conclusion they consider inevitable. "Sorry about that," I said, sliding back into my chair. I picked up my pen. "No need to apologize," my brother said. "Ready to get this done?" "Almost," I said pleasantly. "I just want to read through a few sections one more time. I'm a slow reader. You know how I am." Something shifted almost imperceptibly behind his eyes. Not alarm? Not yet. More like the slight recalibration of someone who expected this part to be over already. "Of course," he said. "Take all the time you need." I flipped to page 47. While I read, I thought about my nephew. My brother's son was 17, quiet the way intelligent teenagers are quiet, absorbing everything, commenting on almost nothing. He had texted me 2 nights ago. I had not thought much of it at the time, had attributed it to the normal low-grade awkwardness of a teenager navigating adult family tension. He had written, "Hey, Aunt Claire, I know this is random, but I was helping Dad with some filing and I saw some papers with your name on them and a law firm I didn't recognize. I don't know if it matters. I just felt weird not saying anything. I had written back, "Thank you, sweetheart. I'll look into it." I had not looked into it immediately. I had told myself I would. I had set my phone face down and gone to make coffee and then not thought about it again until Patricia called this morning. Now I was thinking about it with an intensity that made my hands want to shake, which I could not allow. My nephew had seen the documents. He had felt weird not saying anything. A 17-year-old with no legal training and no financial background had looked at papers with my name on them and known, on some level, that something was wrong. He had sent that text while sitting in his father's house, knowing what it might mean if his father found out. That was not a small thing. I was not going to forget it. My phone, screen down on the table beside the document folder, buzzed once. Patricia's files had arrived. I did not pick up the phone. I did not need to. I had read enough. "There's a clause on page 47 that I have a question about," I said. I kept my voice mild and conversational, the voice of someone who just needs a small clarification before everything proceeds normally. The attorney leaned forward helpfully. "Of course. Which section specifically?" "The property transfer addendum, paragraph 4, sentence 3. I looked up at my brother. "Can you help me understand what terminates co-ownership interest upon execution means in plain language?" The room had a quality of silence after I said that. The kind that comes not from quiet, but from several things happening internally at the same time in the people around you. My brother was very still for approximately 2 seconds. Then he smiled again, looser this time. The smile of someone choosing to be generously patient with the person who is confused. "It's standard transfer language, Claire. It just means the ownership structure is formalized once you sign. It doesn't change anything substantive." I said. Because my accountant read it differently. She read it as surrendering my interest entirely. "Your accountant isn't an attorney," he said. A small edge now, carefully managed. "No," I agreed. "But she is the person who noticed that $340,000 moved out of the business into an LLC registered in Delaware while Dad was in the ICU. I picked up my pen. I turned it over once in my fingers. Then I set it down again, on my side of the table. "And I think I'd like to understand that before I sign anything." The attorney stood up. He made a comment about stepping out to make a call and was through the side door before my brother finished the expression that started on his face. My brother and I sat across from each other in the empty conference room. He tried 3 more times in 3 different registers. First, the patient explanation, then the wounded older brother, then the cold administrative voice that had been running underneath the other 2 all along. He told me I was letting grief make me paranoid. He told me Patricia had always had issues with him, which was news to me. He told me I did not understand how business finances worked, which was condescending in the specific way that told me he had been rehearsing for a version of this conversation. I listened to all of it. I did not argue. I had learned in the last hour that I did not need to argue. I just needed him to keep talking. What he did not know was that my phone was propped against the document folder screen facing away from him, running. Not recording video, something better, a live audio stream to Patricia's laptop where she sat 11 miles away with her forensic accounting contact, a notepad, and 3 hours of documentation she had already assembled. Every word my brother said about the LLC, about the transfer timeline, about his justifications for what he had moved and when, Patricia was getting all of it, time-stamped, automatically backed up. He had chosen a conference room with a strict no recording policy sign on the door because he thought that protected him. It did not protect him when he finally ran out of the version of this conversation he had prepared for. He leaned back and looked at me with something that had stopped pretending to be anything other than what it was. "What do you want, Claire?" "I want a full forensic audit of the business accounts going back to Dad's diagnosis," I said. "I want the Delaware LLC dissolved and the transferred funds returned to the estate. I want new estate documents drawn up by an attorney I select, and I want it done before the end of the month." He laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Or what? Or I file for a formal estate dispute, submit the audio of this conversation and Patricia's documentation to the DA's office, and contact every vendor and partner relationship. Coastal Ridge has to inform them that the ownership structure is under active legal investigation." I paused. "I've already spoken to 2 of Dad's oldest business partners this week. They were very surprised to hear about the Delaware LLC. They were also very interested in the option to have their contracts reviewed." The color that left his face did so gradually, like water draining. You've been planning this? You've been planning this for 14 months, I said quietly. I've been planning this for about 4 hours. I think that tells you something about which one of us actually has a case. He said a few other things after that, angry things, recalibrating things, things that tried to find a handhold on a wall that had become very smooth. I let him say them. I was not there to fight. I had already gotten everything I came for. I walked out of the building into October sunlight and stood on the sidewalk and called Patricia. I got it, she said before I could speak. Her voice was shaking slightly, with relief or adrenaline or both. All of it. He confirmed the LLC. He confirmed the timing. He said enough about intent that our attorney says we have something real to work with. Good, I said. How do you feel? I thought about my father, about the machines, about my brother standing at a podium with tears on his face, talking about legacy and love and the man he had been shaped by, about the 14 months of small explanations and managed access and patient condescension. All of it, a structure built around a single purpose, making sure that when the time came, I would be too confused and too grateful and too trusting to read page 47. I feel like I need breakfast, I said, and then I need to call a good attorney. Patricia laughed, a little ragged. I have 3 names. The next 6 weeks were not simple or clean. Legal processes rarely are. There was a period of intense documentation, and a period of tense negotiation, and a period where my brother's attorney floated terms that Patricia described in language I will not repeat here. There were days I was tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep, but I want to tell you about my nephew because he is the part of the story I think about the most. 3 days after I walked out of that conference room, he called me. He was careful and quiet, and the first thing he said was, "Is my dad in trouble?" I told him the truth, as much of it as a 17-year-old should have to carry. I told him that his father had made choices that had consequences, and that those consequences were not his to carry. I told him that what he had done, sending me that text, choosing to say something even though it was uncomfortable and risky, had mattered more than he knew. I didn't really do anything, he said. You saw something that looked wrong, I said, and instead of deciding it wasn't your problem, you said something. That is not nothing. That is actually the hardest thing. He was quiet for a moment. Are we going to be okay? Like, our family? I did not have a comfortable answer for that, so I gave him an honest one. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I know you and I are going to be okay. Whatever happens, you have a place with me that is not conditional on anything your father does or doesn't do. He exhaled. Long and slow, the kind of exhale that sounds like someone has been holding something for a very long time. The audit was completed 7 weeks after I walked out of that building. The forensic accounting team found $412,000 in improper transfers across 2 holding entities, not one. My brother's attorney negotiated a full restitution agreement that avoided criminal charges in exchange for him surrendering his executor role, repaying the estate in full, and signing a notarized dissolution of his interest in the LLC structure. He retained his share of the inheritance. My father would have wanted that, and I was not interested in destroying him, only in stopping him. But Coastal Ridge Distribution is now managed by a board that includes me, Patricia, and 2 of my father's original partners who came back to the table when they understood what had been happening. I did not speak to my brother for 4 months. When I finally did, it was brief and business-related, and civil in the way that things can be civil without being warm. I do not know if it will ever be more than that. I have made my peace with not knowing. My nephew moved in with me for the spring semester, while things at home were complicated. He is applying to colleges now. He wants to study finance. He says this with a particular dry humor that I appreciate enormously. He is going to be someone who pays attention to page 47, and I think that is one of the most useful things a person can be. I think about my father a lot. I think about what he would say about all of this. He was not a man who talked about feelings easily, but he was a man who showed up consistently for the people he loved. He built something with his hands and his time, and he left it to both of us because he believed in both of us. One of us spent 14 months quietly dismantling that belief. The other one spent 6 weeks building a case on a fluorescent-lit conference room table. I know which outcome my father would have chosen. I know because it was the same outcome I chose. Not revenge, exactly, but accountability. The difference matters. Revenge would have felt satisfying for a day and hollow after. Accountability felt like something I could live inside of, something that honored what was actually lost. Here is what I know now that I did not know 14 months ago. Standing at my father's bedside, believing that grief was the only thing I needed to survive, trust is not a character flaw. The problem was never that I trusted too much. The problem was that I trusted without verifying, and I let the discomfort of asking questions stop me from asking them. I let someone else's impatience with my curiosity teach me that my curiosity was a problem. It was not a problem. It was the one thing that, when I finally used it, saved everything. If someone in your life becomes visibly irritated when you ask reasonable questions about things that affect you, that irritation is information. Not about your reasonableness, about theirs. Read the whole document, all the way to page 47. And if someone you trust tells you something is wrong, put the pen down and step into the hallway, even if the room is full of people who have been waiting, even if everything looks settled and inevitable, even if you have already driven 40 minutes and dressed carefully and told yourself you were finally ready to move forward. Move forward! Just not into a room where someone has already written the ending without you. I am still writing mine.